I'm James Rule. Welcome to the Lonely Leader podcast, where we help existing and aspiring leaders find clarity, build resilience, drive performance, and enhance fulfillment. Today, we're going to talk about one of the fundamental principles of professional growth, and that is credibility. People often talk about visibility in an organization. To progress, to get ahead, you've got to be visible. And to a degree, that's true. But visibility without credibility is just noise. You can be highly visible without having the trust of the people around you. And I think that's the fundamental principle of what we're talking about today. You have to gain the trust of people. That is the cornerstone of credibility. And if you want to move forward and progress professionally, you've got to find ways to enhance that credibility and that trust. And that will give you that elevated level of visibility to be given the higher profile projects, the higher levels of responsibility, the promotions, the career development that you aspire to. So I'm going to break down, as usual, a few simple, actionable steps that I always guide people with in terms of how you start to develop that trust and credibility and how you start to inject a new level of momentum into your professional career. Tip number one, continuous learning and skill development. Now, when you're new into a role, there's always an onboarding process. That injection of knowledge and skill is given to you to get you to a level, but it shouldn't stop at the onboarding process. There are always things we can learn. There are always courses, certifications that we can pursue, qualifications that enhance our skill and our knowledge base. And a great way to frame this is to ask yourself, how can I develop myself so that I can contribute more value to the team, to the company that I'm operating in? Because when you frame it like that, you open your eyes, you broaden your perspective, your horizons, if you will, to see the opportunities. Well, actually, I could do this course, I could do this training, I could enroll in this program, I could read this book, there's this podcast, there's this information on YouTube. Whatever it may be, how do you become the go-to authority in your space, in your particular niche? And maybe you've got multiple areas that you're covering. Well, when you think you've got to that point, yes, I'm the authority, I've got that credibility, people trust and respect my opinion in that niche, move on to the next one. So this is not something that you need to wait for top-down guidance from your boss to say, I want you to do this course or that course. It's about you being constantly open, tuned in, and aware of opportunities to enhance your skill, knowledge, and insight. You want to be the go-to man or lady in that particular area. Tip number two, build and maintain a personal brand. Now, this resonates with some people. Other people, I get that little bit of cynicism, a personal brand. Why do I need a personal brand? Well, it's a modern way of talking about your reputation, how you are perceived. How do you want people to perceive you in all facets of your life, but particularly in your professional role? What traits, values do you want people to see and talk about when they think of you? Once you've got clarity on what that looks like, then you can start taking the steps to make sure that you are delivering that. And that sounds like I'm talking in riddles, but I'm very, very passionate about the ways you can enhance your brand, your behaviors, how you interact with your peers. It all has a bearing on your brand. Now, many of us have some external facing windows into our brand, if you will. How you portray yourself on the platforms such as LinkedIn, for instance, what sort of comments you're making on there, what content are you creating, what content are you sharing? All of that reflects on your knowledge and your authority in a particular space. So I think it's important that we're constantly maintaining that, not just for the good of your existing role, but truth be told, there's every chance that you won't be with one organization for the entirety of your career. So your professional, your personal brand needs to be maintained. If somebody's looking into LinkedIn, it's like looking into your shop window. What do they see? How do you promote your attributes, your knowledge, and your skill base? So take a moment to frame that. And an illustration I sometimes use with clients is imagine you've had a GoPro camera on and you get to watch that back. You get to watch all your interactions over the previous couple of weeks, both in your personal network and your professional network. How do people perceive you when you get to see their faces and their reactions? Is it a warm, receptive interaction, or are people guarded? Are people worried? Are people rolling their eyes? Are people shaking their head? Are there things that you've missed? Now you're watching it back, thinking, "Ooh, perhaps I wasn't doing my brand a particular service there. I was a little bit abrupt. I wasn't as supportive as I could have been. I wasn't as attentive or as present as I could have been." So really think about how your personal and professional brand helps build that credibility and that trust with everybody that you interact with. Tip number 3, network and develop relationships. Now, this ties back into the first point about growth and skill development. One of the best ways you can do that is to expand your network, to develop relationships with people who have walked the path ahead of you. Perhaps it's more senior personnel within your existing organization, perhaps it's people in other organizations. But do not be afraid to approach people and seek out those mentoring opportunities. It often fills people with trepidation and anxiety when I talk about this. But the worst anybody can say to you is, no, I refuse to help. But the vast majority of cases, in fact, almost the entirety of cases that I've witnessed this or had clients feedback to me, people are genuinely flattered if you ask them for advice. So seeking out those individuals within your network or within your network's network, i.e., somebody referring or introducing you to somebody, and just being open. I respect what you do. I admire what you have achieved. Would we be able to grab a Zoom call? Could I meet you for a coffee? I would love to ask you a couple of questions. Now, that is developing a relationship. It's expanding your network. It's developing your brand because they get to see you, experience you, get a feel for you, and that is then within their mind. But it's also helping your growth and development because you are accessing knowledge and wisdom gleaned by people who have had different experiences to you. And that can all be downloaded into your own personal style, your own DNA, your own leadership style. But if you don't seek that out, you won't get that access. And networking on a general level, it doesn't always have to be about mentoring. But if you don't get out there, if you don't develop that digital shop window through platforms such as LinkedIn that I've alluded to, if you're not going to events, if you're not connecting with people outside of your existing team, how do you expect to grow your visibility and your credibility? How do you expect to develop trust? And this is something that came up in a group training I was doing recently with a senior group of leaders. And at the end, one of the leaders made the point. She said, "Look, we don't interact with each other enough. So when it comes to trust, when it comes to having difficult conversations, that's always a lot easier when there's a higher level of connectivity. When that connectivity is lacking, it becomes much more difficult. And that's true to all of us. So if you are highly connected with your immediate team, where else can you push out to into the wider organization? Now, something that sticks in my memory prior to me becoming chief executive for the first time, and for those of you that listen to previous podcast, I was fortunate to be able to become a chief executive of a professional sports organization in my late 20s. But prior to me making that jump, prior to me actually putting my neck out and pushing for that CEO role, I was asking questions. I had a curiosity. I was exploring different facets of the business. Now, at that moment in time, I was a commercial director. I was in a particular niche, but I was popping up in the community department. I was popping up in the finance department. I was popping up in the retail department. And I was just asking questions. I was developing my visibility without a shadow of a doubt, but I was trying to develop my knowledge and insight going back to point number one. And when I actually stepped into the chief executive role, a lot of people came back and said, I was curious as to why you were asking so many questions, but it makes sense now. But what I was also doing was I was building relationships and networks. People, I think, were flattered that I was taking the time to come in and really want to try and understand their area of the business. So when we think of network, people often think, let's go external. Who can I make a contact with? Quite often, there's opportunities to develop a much stronger network within your own organization. There's opportunities for you to enhance your skill, knowledge, and insight by going into department, into other areas of your existing business that you don't necessarily interact with on a daily basis as part of your core role. Seek and use feedback. Sounds so obvious, much harder to do in practice. So many of us allow our ego to permeate to the surface, and any contrary opinion, any challenge to what we're saying is perceived as a personal attack, a sign of disrespect, something that must be defended, pushed back against, overcome, stamped out, whatever terminology you want to use. But actually, when you grow in confidence and those insecurities and fears are suppressed, you start to realize that actually feedback is invaluable. And the last thing we want is for your team to not feel like they've got that psychological safety, that comfort to be able to challenge you. Yes, you're their superior, but you cannot create an echo chamber. You do not want to be in that vacuum where everybody just agrees with everything that you say and everybody's swept along in groupthink. It's really important to have different perspectives, different viewpoints. I'm reading an interesting book at the minute called Rebel Ideas, and it talks about the challenges in sectors such as aviation, where co-pilots haven't felt comfortable challenging the captain because it's perceived as a mark of disrespect, even to the point where there's been subsequent disasters and planes have crashed because they haven't been willing to highlight their concerns because they presume, well, the captain will spot it eventually. So I encourage every leader to always be open to feedback from your team. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to flip and flop and agree with everything and be constantly changing your strategy from one position to another. What it does mean is you have to have the humility that if somebody highlights something that is perhaps a better idea than the one you had, or a reason why you need to change the strategy because there's a potential pitfall or risk that you hadn't identified, then you've got to be humble enough to course correct. And it comes back to this point about trust and valuing people. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Quite the contrary. You want to be grateful that you've got people looking out for the wider interests of the company and indeed your back. They're highlighting something that could have gone wrong on your watch. And when you implement that, when you thank people for that, and you recognize that their suggestion is now being implemented, there's no negative. You've avoided a problem. And the big positive is they feel a higher sense of value because they've brought something to you, you've respected and listened to their opinion, and indeed implemented it into the strategy moving forward. So you've got a stronger, deeper relationship, a higher level of trust with your colleague. Deliver consistent results. Once again, I make no apology for stating the obvious. The most effective way to build credibility is delivering credible results consistently. If I use a sporting analogy because of my long service that I had in the sporting sector, when somebody's new into a team, people are naturally a little bit wary. Once they've played a few games, they've seen that they can step up, they've seen that they can hold their responsibilities, they can deliver on their responsibilities, then that trust is automatically strengthened. Conversely, if they come in and they're making mistake after mistake after mistake, people become a little bit more wary and they're not as trusting that they can do the job. So to build credibility, focusing on everything within your control and do it to the very best of your ability. However mundane, however trivial, you want that reputation that you execute at the highest standard consistently. And it doesn't matter how large or small a project or task is, you have that personal integrity and standards that you will deliver it to the highest level. That is the foundation on which you can then build when you're seeking to expand your network. The relationships, as we've alluded to earlier, you're building on a solid foundation. People will already be aware of you. They'll already be aware of the quality of your work, and therefore they'll be much more willing to give of their time. They're much more willing, as we talked in the previous points about feedback. People are much more willing to give you feedback when they feel that you've already earned your stripes, so to speak. You're already there consistently doing a good job. Conversely, if people feel like you don't really care and your results are pretty sloppy, then they're much less likely to want to give up their time to invest in you, to give you feedback, to mentor, etc. So I know it sounds blindingly obvious, but make sure you execute to the best of your ability on each and every task. As ever, we get to this stage, and I'm hoping that whether you're out walking the dog, you're in the gym, you're driving, that there's some reflection taking place and some ideas of how you can tweak how you operate. Now, I'm not saying that you need to do all of these things, you'll be doing a lot of it, but what area could you take? If you had to just take one action away, is it I just need to double down and be a bit more consistent on my execution? I've probably let my standards slip on a couple of things that I'm not as interested in. I need to raise the standard of my work there. Is it having the confidence to reach out to a mentor and ask for some advice? Is there somebody you can think of now that actually I should really ask for some FaceTime with them? The worst they can say is no. Is there a course or a certification you could go for and say, I could enhance my skills, my knowledge if I went and did that, but I've been putting it off. I didn't feel as though I had enough time or desire to do it. Maybe there's something you can enroll there. What about seeking feedback? Are you brave enough to seek feedback from above and indeed from below, from your team that might be reporting into you, in terms of, are you doing enough for them? How are they finding working with you? Are there any areas that they would like you to improve upon? They're very, very difficult questions to hear, but actually, once you step through that initial discomfort, it just binds everybody closer together and drives performance for you as a leader and for the overall team dynamic. So I hope there's something in there that you can take away. As ever, stay connected, keep in touch via LinkedIn. It's proven to be one of the most popular. I love to get the DMs, the feedback on what's working for you, your tweaks, your suggestions. And as ever, if there's content that you want me to cover, areas that you want me to explore, do keep firing them through. Toxic leadership, a recent feature, was one such suggestion from an individual that was struggling a little bit in that domain. So I do genuinely take on board those suggestions and try and curate content accordingly. Thanks for listening to the Lonely Leader podcast. I'd be very grateful if you could share and follow if the content resonates. And if you're looking for additional free resource to support your continued growth and development, then please do check out our social media and website details in the show notes. Remember, quality leadership on the outside must always start within.